to another edition of the Welch Report. Get excited, get hyped. We are back again with another episode for you all to enjoy. I'm so excited. I'm not losing my voice no more. I've gotten over the sickness. Everything's coming up roses for Mr. Jean-Luc Welch. Like I said before, I'm your host, Jean-Luc Welch, here to bring you beautiful people, beautiful listeners or watchers, wherever you're watching this on YouTube or listening to it on YouTube as you drive to work or wherever. And again, please play this wherever you go. In your car, in the bath, taking care of children. I don't care. You know why? Because they won't either. Because they're listening to the best sports analysis show on the market today. And I bring all this because it's what I love to do, and I love you, beautiful people. Let's build a community together, and let's build this channel up. Oh yeah, so I can get some money, and I can bring some better product for you all to enjoy. So leave a like on the video, comment on your opinions on all of this that we're about to talk about. Subscribe to the channel and share it with whoever you know. Because trust me, this show is not a show. It's an experience. It is an experience that everybody should experience. So, again, clap it up for another return of the show. I'm so happy to be back. We got so much to talk about, specifically in the NBA. And we're going to talk about free agency. Now that it's slowed down, the moves that have been made, grading some of the major moves that have been made. And, do I think, are they good? Are they bad? Are they ugly? Also going to cover boxing again. Oh, I'm so glad I get to cover boxing again. Hakeem Rahman and Jake Paul, how that fight got essentially canceled and whose fault is it really? And much more on the show today. But sadly, it's with a heavy heart that we must talk about one of the icons of basketball, the cornerstone of the NBA. Bill Russell sadly passed away a few days ago with his wife, who's married to for who knows how long. It's been a minute. Happily married, and the giant is gone. The cornerstone of the NBA. The man who built this league and paved the way for what we see today has sadly passed away. The reason why I want to talk about it, not just because he is a iconic figure, again, a cornerstone of not just basketball and the NBA, but of all sports here in America and around the world. He is a global figure, and what he did is incredible. And I don't want to just talk about what he's done. I want you all to sit back and understand exactly why, on the court and off the court, this man is so revered. And in doing so, we're going to touch on a thing about old players that I think this generation of fans has really gotten skewed up. So understand this about Bill Russell. 11-time champion, of course. Everybody knows that. Again, the greatest winner that we've seen in American team sports. 8 straight finals wins, 11 in 13 years. It was incredible what he did. The brother was averaging 15, 22, and 4. If you're into advanced stats, 163 win shares, an 18.9 PER rating. There's a reason why he was on the top 25, top 50, top 75. And when the top 100 comes out, he's going to be on that list for the greatest players of all time. This was a man who, mind you, before we even talk about on the court, off the court, this was a brother, along with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, along with Jim Brown, along with Muhammad Ali, was in the height of racism here in America. The black man and black people were absolutely vilified during his time of play. Born in 1932, grew up in the 60s. Horrible time, terrible time. This was a brother who was playing amidst huge ridicule. And understand where he was playing. He was playing in Boston, Yes, we idolize Boston as a title town city. Oh, they got the Patriots, they got the Celtics, they got a bunch of teams that just seemingly all they do is win. But underneath that sports culture of winning, sports town, they're incredibly racist. They're racist today. Excuse me if you're from Boston. No offense to anybody from Boston. Love y'all. You people who I know from Boston. Love y'all. You're phenomenal. But the rest of y'all and the rest of the people that are in Boston, they are. The city's racist. Let's just be frank. The city is racist. And that's by 2022 standards. Back in 1960, my goodness, for you to be able to be just a black man in general in Boston was scary. Let alone you leading that team. The amount of pressure that he was under just to live, let alone thrive. He was essentially forced to win, because if he didn't, what was going to happen? Threats on his life. He got threats on his life when he did win. Just for being a black man. Saying a Negro shouldn't lead a team. Get out of our city. All this mess he had to fight with, or rather fight against, while still upholding and upholding not only the symbol on his jersey in Boston, but more importantly, infinitely more importantly, upholding the standard of the black man in Boston. Amongst the hate, amongst the tirades of white people coming in and absolutely ripping him to shreds. Threats on his life, threats on his family. Mind you, this is a black man, this is a man who married a white woman in the 60s and was also one of the most iconic and recognizable people of his generation in America. So everybody knew him. You know what you compare this to? Boxing. Jack Johnson. Jack Johnson was a boxer, first African-American boxer to win the World Heavyweight Championship. One of the greats of all time. Again, another cornerstone of the sport. Went through similar things. Now, granted, he lived his life differently. Still a pioneer. But the way he went about going against what white society said a black man should be, he lived rich. You see what Floyd Mayweather does now, flaunting money and all that stuff. He gets hate just because people think he's cocky. But nobody can deny he's successful. Hence why he has so many fans. Jack Johnson, that man lived like Floyd back in his era in time. Way, 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 way back. And this man, because of that lavish lifestyle, for that day, was seen as was feared. Legitimately feared by white society, by white America. A black man with power who could also knock out anybody else, again, as heavyweight champion of the world, regardless of what era, you are considered the baddest man on the planet. And unlike boxing today, when you have a bunch of belts, there was only one belt at the time that Jack Johnson won it. And what that one belt means that you ran through everybody in the division. So he went and beat every single legitimate heavyweight of his time, claimed the title and reigned as a black man amongst and against what other people, what the media of that time considered to be the white hopes that would come up and take his title, or the white hopes that would keep him from gaining the title in the first place. You want to talk about pressure. You want to talk about fear. You want to talk about legitimate life and death living on a knife's edge. That's what Jack Johnson had to go through. Similarly, that's what Bill Russell had to go through. And even more so, Bill Russell went and not just lived in a way that forced white America to say, we respect you, but actively called out and marched, protested, and spoke out against the happenings of white America against black society. Unapologetically. We had a whole spiel on LeBron James, Kevin Durant, and other athletes speaking on politics directly, just about a president that they didn't like, saying shut up and dribble. And that was considered, oh my gosh, how dare you say that? And again, how dare they say that? Athletes should be able to say what they want. Because just because you're an athlete doesn't make you any less of an intellectual. You have full right, full reign to be educated and to state your opinion. And if you know what you're talking about, knowledge is not relegated to a profession. Knowledge is relegated to the journey, the search, the reaching out and obtaining. You can do that from any profession, in anywhere, regardless of who you are or what you do. So for them to say that people like LeBron James, Kevin Durant, and other players speaking out are out of line, they need to get back to do what they're doing, that blew up across America. People were saying, people were looking at him and saying, how dare you speak out of turn, essentially, in terms of LeBron James, Kevin Durant, and other players of the like. National media attention. With Bill Russell, it was essentially, Negro, we will kill you. Forget just play your sport. You come to the Garden, we might take you out. We might burn down your house. We might end your life. All that is the stuff that he was being threatened with, and yet he still stood tall, stood firm, and was, again, a pinnacle, an icon, a beacon of hope for black people, and an advocate for the change that we inevitably saw for years to come. And even today, we're able to look back at how he handled himself, the morals that he stood on, and his way that he viewed the world and viewed how society should be, and have the ability to still take those teachings and apply them to make our way of life better. Not just for black people, but for everybody. The stuff that he was advocating and the mentality that he had didn't just translate to just helping out black America, even though that was the goal. That's what makes him so great off the court. The stuff that he was saying, the stuff that he was teaching, the stuff that he was trying to change equates to the betterment of everybody. It was incredible what he did, the risks that he took. That's what makes this man so great. And that's just off the court. On the court, this was a man who was considered one of the greatest defensive players the NBA has ever seen. The greatest winner that the NBA has ever seen. One of the greatest athletes that the NBA has ever seen. One of the most versatile, selfless, dominant players that were not only able to take over a game by himself, but also, like we see with LeBron, use his impact to make everybody else on his squad better. One of the things about the Celtics during that championship run, many of them are in the Hall of Fame. I believe the entire starting five is in the Hall of Fame for that main core. And there's maybe like 6 or 7 people from that team, from that run, that made it to the Hall of Fame. Now, I'm not knocking what they are or who they are and how good they were. But it's a fair assumption to say, not assumption, it's a fair analysis. Let me rephrase that. It's a fair analysis to say that many of them are in the Hall of Fame because of Bill Russell. More so than their own skill. That's how great he was. People talk about how he had so many Hall of Famers on his squad. And he did. He did have a phenomenal squad. Don't get it twisted. But the reason why we hold him in such high esteem is because of the fact that he was the one that caused everybody else to be great. I can almost guarantee that they would have maybe gotten 1, maybe 2 championships if Bill Russell had never been drafted by the Boston Celtics. if he had never been drafted, if he had stayed with the St. Louis Hawks, or if he had gotten drafted to any other team, Celtics would not have won. I can say that wholeheartedly. Maybe one. At max, two. In that 13-year span. At max, two. There is no doubt in my mind. Bill Russell was the driving force. Caused everybody else to get into the Hall of Fame that was on his team. Then won two, I believe, a couple championships as a coach. And by coach, I mean coach player. But it was on the floor playing as well as on the sideline drawing up what the team needs to do. Normally you see coaches having suit and tie on the sideline. The coach was actively on the floor, calling out subs, moving people around, drawing up plays, making schemes, all on the court. That is incredible. And the one thing that you have to understand about players like Bill Russell and players like him around that time, yes, the game is more advanced today than it was back then. It's stupid to say otherwise. It's idiotic to say anything less. However, that does not take away from what players did during their era. Nor should it say that they're just obsolete because, they just played way back then. Many of the players that played back then, if they had the same level of care, training, pay, when this could be a full-time profession instead of just a part-time job for many of them, they could be as skilled as the players that we see now. Because you got to understand, while everybody says, you were guarding against plumbers or whatever, and defense was so bad and ball handling was so bad and all these skills that they had, they were just so underdeveloped. Understandable. Again, the game has evolved now more than ever. However, if everybody's playing so beneath the high caliber that we see today, or quote unquote Neanderthal-esque basketball, as some people may call it. And with that limited amount of skill, a player is able to average 22 and 15. Or like Wilt, 30 and something. What would that mean if that same player was able to have all the requisite training, like drop them in the modern day? It's not like they can't learn. That's the thing. You can take what somebody does and put it in a finite box and still hold it in high esteem while still understanding the evolution of the game and grading an all-time great player of the past accordingly without tearing them down and saying, they're nothing. Just a fact. Wilt Chamberlain, perfect example. 50 and 25 in the season. Didn't win MVP, even though he should have that year. Two-time champion. The most dominant presence the NBA has ever seen. Yes, more than Shaq. And everybody says that, he was playing against people that were shorter than him. Even though played against Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, played against Bill Russell, played against other great centers of that era, a lot of whom we still talk about today as all-time greats. Again, went up against a young Kareem, it was putting up 37, 25, 42, going to war with them. Prime Kareem, Afro Kareem, just changed his name just changed from Lou Alcindor. Playing with Oscar Robinson Kareem. That Kareem. The one that just came off of 3 national championships, 3 national player of the years in college. That Kareem. Wilt was past his prime on the Lakers and was putting up those types of stats. And he was doing it with moves that nowadays we go and say, oh, shoot, look at that. Nikola Jokic, perfect example. Unathletic, he both plays and moves like the players of the 60s and 70s and 80s. Like Kevin McHale. To a lesser degree, like Bob Petty, even though Bob Petty was a little more athletic. And what's he doing? Two-time MVP, 27, 8, and 11. Averaging 10 assists 1 year. The vocal point of the Nuggets, taking the Warriors to school in a valiant effort, even in losing, showing that he was the most dominant presence in that series. They could not stop him, even when he had nobody else around him. No Jamal Murray, no Michael Porter Jr. Aaron Gordon was coming up small, the only offensive option, and arguably their best defensive presence, and was taking it to them. But he can't run. But he can't jump. He's slow. He looks out of shape. Even when he's in shape, he looks out of shape. But what is he doing? Mopping the floor with the entire league. So if a player like that is able to be successful, using the similar play styles of bygone eras, footwork, post hooks, up and unders, drop steps. Yes, he can shoot, but where does most of his damage come from? 15 to 10 feet in the paint. 15 feet to under the basket. Lethal, unstoppable. Going up against people like Marvin Bagley, like DeAndre Ayton, like Rudy Gobert, like Joel Embiid. They can't stop him. And they're way more athletic than him. Like Karl Anthony Towns, like Anthony Davis, like Giannis Antetokounmpo. I just named, what was it, 4, 5, 6, however many big men that would, quote unquote, run and just beat up any old era player. And what is Jokic doing with the old style game? Taking it to him. Taking it to all of them. So don't say, if you're going to analyze the sport, don't say that because of an era bygone, they're too far gone to have any credence to be put in an all-time great category. Or if you do put them in that category, don't just put them in terms of legacy. Oh, they meant this much to the game. You just have to put them in there. Skill-wise, nah. But what they mean to the game of basketball, you just can't be disrespectful. Don't give courtesy. Give context. That's how you need to analyze. That's how the sport should be done. That's how all-time greats should be contextualized. That allows it so that you, as a fan, are able to appreciate the past, understand what they brought to the table, see what made them so great, even by today's standards, despite the level of competition that they were going up against, and give them their flowers without tearing them down. Because again, you can't say that old players are just obsolete, but then ooh and ah and post and watch ESPN highlights of a summer league player doing a running hook and getting 40,000 likes, 100,000 likes. You can't do that. Because you're saying that style of play, that just, what the world? That fundamental play when people can't jump, when everybody was playing in black and white, no three-point line, people jacking up from set shots from 30, 35 feet, two-handed up. You can't say that, but then ooh and ah at an old school type move and say, oh, that was pretty. And then on the flip side, say, I wish more people did da 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 da. And then look at old players who did said thing that you're asking for, and then say, no, they were just, look at the time. They were just playing against, again, firemen. 5'5" white men. You can't do that. It's a contradiction. And it hurts your ability to truly appreciate the game of basketball. It hurts your ability to truly analyze and love the sport and properly put players in the context that they are in and properly gauge the game that each player brought to the table. We've seen Bill Russell run the floor. We've seen Will Chamberlain run the floor. We've seen them get boards and do things that if they did in the modern day, they would be successful. Because I'll tell you something right now. If you got people right now who are just uber athletic, but ain't able to hold a lick to somebody that is fundamentally sound, i.e. Tim Duncan. You know, I'm talking about Tim Duncan later in his career. Not prime Tim Duncan with athleticism. Late Tim Duncan, who didn't have a lot of athleticism, was taking every big man to school. Old Tim Duncan is the quintessential example for why an old school-esque play style can be unstoppable. He played just like that. Down in the post, footwork, fundamental head fakes, using the backboard, all that stuff that everybody said was boring. He then went on to have how many? 15 all defensive awards, maybe plus, for however long he was in the league. Made the All-Star game just about every year. Is considered the greatest power forward, one of the best all-time defensive players the game has ever seen, and can be considered in the top 10 all-time for players. At minimum, top 15. And how did he play? Back to the basket. Slow, methodical. So we were able to hold him at a high esteem, but then other players do the exact same thing just because they were against, again, 5'5" white men. You know that notion is stupid. You can't praise one and then say the other one's obsolete. You can't do that. You're better than that as a fan. You're better than that as an observer. And you're better than that as a basketball savant. I'm not saying you start putting people like Bob Pettit top 5 all time. No. I'm not letting nostalgia blind me. But I'm also not letting recency bias pull the wool over my eyes as to being able to appreciate the game today. So again, do your research. Understand the game. Understand how old people played. Understand how past eras were successful. Don't look at the competition. Look at what they did individually to help give you a better context of why they were so successful. That way you'll be able to fully understand and appreciate all eras of basketball, instead of just throwing people out as obsolete, who were actually incredibly dangerous and incredibly successful. And if players today took from players of the past more often, we would see an even more nuanced game. We would see an even more exciting game. But people just overlook it and say it's just obsolete. It's not the case. Once you understand that, you'll be better for it. And you'll be able to push the game forward for the better, like Bill Russell did during his career. So rest in peace, Bill Russell. You will be missed. You will never be forgotten. You will always be remembered. And you set an example that everybody can follow. And happy trails, because we are going to miss you. Now more than ever, we need people like you. And I hate that he's gone. I just hope that everybody latches on to not just on the floor what he did, but off the floor who he was. Rest in peace. You will be missed. So moving on to the next topic of the day, to get everything set up, free agency, like we talked about, we got to discuss what the world's going on and why, one, the moves that have been made so far, the major ones, and why everything's on hold, and why everything seems to be at a standstill at the moment in time. So first off, let's gauge and grade exactly who has made good moves in the free agency. Starting off with arguably the biggest move of free agency, the Timberwolves. Yes, some of my friends are Timberwolves fans don't get too excited. I'm gonna tell you why. Timberwolves were able to get Rudy Gobert for the package of Patrick Beverley, Malik Beasley, Jared Vanderbilt, Leonardo Ballamaro, excuse me for saying that name right, and let me catch my breath, as well as the 2023, 2025, 2026, 2027, and 2029 first round draft picks. And the 2026 draft pick is a swap if it turns out to be in the first round. Now I want you to look at what I just said. I'm going to repeat it so you understand. Patrick Beverley, Malik Beasley, Jared Vanderbilt, Leonardo Ballamaro, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 draft picks. All of which being first round. 2026 one being first round draft swap. Now, why is that so bad? Some would say, oh, it's all the moves. They gave up a whole bunch of depth. Yeah, granted. Let's look at what they do have. Rudy Gobert, Karl-Anthony Towns, D'Lo, and Edwards. That four is deadly. Sounds like phenomenal roster. Outside shooting with D'Lo and Cat, as well as an inside scoring presence in Cat, to a very lesser degree, but still a degree, Rudy Gobert. Then a defensive presence in Rudy Gobert, and a very less defensive presence in Karl-Anthony Towns. So essentially, two big men that counter at each other, both 7 feet tall. One can dominate on the offensive end while the other one just catches lobs. In terms of Cat being the dominant offensive player, Rudy catches lobs. And then Rudy is able to be the center defensive anchor and let Cat play power forward and open up the floor on the offensive end and be the staple of defense on the defensive end, showing up any mistakes that Karl-Anthony Towns will indefinitely make. And make up for the lack of perimeter defense, which is going to lead to more penetration on the defensive end against the Timberwolves with the loss of people like Malik Beasley and Patrick Beverley. But with that being said, this is bad. This is incredibly bad. This is ominous. This is incredibly disheartening. Reason being, not because of who they got, but the amount that they had to give up for him. Understand this about free agency right now. Look at with how much they had to give up for Rudy Gobert. That is the asking price for, again, a dominant defensive presence but brings relatively nothing on the offensive end. A one-way star, defensive star, mind you, in an offensively led league, called for that much. Called for 1, 2, 3, 4 players and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 first-round draft picks. That is a haul for Utah. It is a haul for Utah. That is too much for a player like Rudy Gobert. But that's what the market demands. And because that's what the market demands for a player like Rudy Gobert, that brings up the question of what the world is that going to be for Kevin Durant and Kyrie to get traded? That's the holdup for the entire NBA right now. But we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that. First off, grading this acquisition. The Timberwolves had a lot of pieces. And that's what I liked about that team. They were relatively deep. I'm not saying they were the deepest team. But they had names that could legitimately do something. Multifaceted team with again, dedicated defensive presences, offensive talent, young, fast, up and coming, with experience, they could be a real threat. Now, while they have a boost in the experience factor in Rudy Gobert, who's been in the playoffs, who's faced against top-tier talent, who's been on winning teams. Mind you, Utah at one time had top 3 record in their division. In their conference. I believe they had a 1 seed at one point as well. So he knows what it's like and has experience in what needs to be done to be successful. So brings a veteran leadership, brings a more experienced playoff leadership aspect, which allows to further expedite the evolution of this team in reaching their zenith, in reaching their peak, and getting to where they're up here mentally, as well as on the court. So he brings that to the table and shows up defense. But with how much they gave up, what moves can they really make if they need to get better? Because right now, this team sounds great, but with the lack of depth that they essentially gave up, it's going to be that they're going to have it's going to be incredibly hard, not only to make moves down the line, but at the same time being able to have the ability to evolve. And it's going to be contention on what Anthony Edwards is going to be. If Anthony Edwards does not reach the evolution in his game, and like I said, I think he can be a 25 per game point scorer. I've said that in the past in podcast collaborations with the Got Next podcast with Mitchell and Donovan. Go check it out if you can. But I've said that with them on the show and on their channel. But at the same time, if he's not able to be a dual threat, because they're going to need somebody to be able to get stops on the perimeter to make up for D'Lo. It's going to be the case. They can get to the second round, but conference finals looks like at this stage in their career, looks like the max. And that's if everybody's playing at their peak. At their peak. If not, it's probably going to be another second round exit. Most likely. It's going to be another second round exit. The only, if not, it would be that Anthony Edwards has reached the stardom that we see in the potential that he has, and Karl Anthony Towns at the 4, which is what he's been most comfortable playing, Because him at the 5, again, while a top 5 center in the league, was struggling, especially on the defensive end. And against physical defenders who were the same size as him, you saw anguish on his face. You saw he had to work incredibly hard to get what he wanted. That's why he could never get out of any round. Him playing at the 5 just didn't work. Him playing at the 4, with him being a versatile 7-foot ball handling big who can spread from the outside, shoot at a high level, and get to the basket, and has an offensive bag that is legitimately good. If he plays up to that potential and get to the position where, okay, this is what you want, this is where you're most comfortable, show up. Okay, now we're talking about a real contender. If not, we're looking at another second round exit. We're looking at another second round exit. Because it's not going to be that Rudy Gobert is a guy that puts them over the top. It's just not. It's going to be the elevation of Karl Anthony Towns at a new position that he's more comfortable at, and Anthony Edwards reaching the stardom on both sides of the ball that we see that he can have. Big, strong, explosive wing that can shoot from the outside, play bully ball as well, get to the hoop, has a great shot, can score from a bunch of different angles in different spots. If he can make sure his defense is up to snuff and use his physical capabilities to the fullest to help compensate for D'Lo's inability to defend, and D'Lo plays consistently, and Karl Anthony Towns elevates his game, you're looking at a real contender. You're looking at minimum, a real threat to upset a finals favorite in their conference. But if one of those two things don't happen, they don't get out the second round. And if they get to the conference finals, they get swept. Mark my words. Mark my words. Rudy Gobert getting added is a good addition. But those two, one in a new position in Karl Anthony Towns that he's more comfortable in, and Anthony Edwards taking the reins as you're next in line to be the it guy, play like the it guy on both sides of the floor. If one of those two things don't happen, second round exit. If both of those things don't happen, first round exit. And at worst, they don't make the playoffs in a mind-blowing circumstance. That's what's going to happen. So this trade is good with the asterisks. It's good if those two things happen. If one of those two things don't happen, Rudy Gobert is not going to make the difference that we think he's going to make. The Twin Towers, as we like to call them, aren't going to be what we think they're going to be. They're just not. That is just the truth. And I love Karl Anthony Towns. But he's got to be able to, now that he's in a more comfortable spot, be and show his skill. He's got to show that he's worth the conversation of top 5 big men. Or at the time, top 5 center. Now he's got to show that he's in the consideration for top 10 big men. Excuse me, let me rephrase that. He's got to play like he's trying to fight to close the gap and be talked about in that top 5 category. Now that he's a power forward. And that means in the conversation with Jokic, AD, Joel, and you would not only want to put DeAndre Ayton. And yeah, Karl Anthony Towns. So we'll say he's 4. Do I have that right? Oh, excuse me. Hold on. Let me rephrase it. Giannis, Jokic, no order. Just naming the names. Giannis, Jokic, AD, Joel, and Cat. Giannis, Jokic, AD, Joel, and Cat. Yeah. So he's in that 5. In terms of big men. Don't believe I'm forgetting anybody. If I am, please correct me in the comments down below. But if he wants to close that gap in terms of, I'm talked about as a legitimate 5 instead of just, oh yeah, and Cat. Those 4, and then yeah, he's there. The gap is it's not even worth mentioning. But yeah, Karl Anthony Towns is there as the 5th best big man in the league. If he wants to close that gap and be really talked about as in the mix instead of just being so far away, he's got to play like it. Because this is the best time. This is the best time for him to show what he's worth as a big man. If not, his stock is going to drop. His stock is going to drop, absolutely, if he does not show up this season. It's just the truth. In my estimation, that's the main thing. Now you'll go, another team, look at the Lakers. Specifically, moves that they made. Juan Toscano Anderson, Troy Brown, Thomas Bryant, Damian Jones, Lonnie Walker. What is the trend with all those pickups? Youth. Finally, my goodness, youth. Juan Toscano Anderson, loved him when he was in Golden State. Thomas Bryant, good big man from Washington, coming back. I think he used to play for LA. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry. But coming to LA, providing some legitimate offensive youth and size. Damian Jones, another young defensive big man. Now that Dwight Howard was getting old, is old. And for all that strength, we saw him struggle as a backup. And now you got 2 great defensive and offensive. Well, one offensive good, in Thomas Bryant, and one defensively active big in Damian Jones. 2 people that can back up Anthony Davis. Or come in and play the 4. And then another one come in and play the 5 when he's out, resting. Hopefully, it'll take the load off of Anthony Davis, who's always injury prone. They at least have something they can go to instead of having to have LeBron go back and play center for the season, average 28 or 30 something, however many points it was, playing center, which should not happen. And then getting Troy Brown and Lonnie Walker and Juan Toscano Anderson, specifically Juan and Lonnie, those 2 players I'm really excited for. Lonnie is a Skywalker who's incredibly skilled. Very good on the Spurs. Very good on the Spurs. Loved him on the Spurs. Now he's most likely going to get more playing time, especially with Malik Monk signing with another team, the Kings. Lonnie Walker's going to get some play. Can shoot from the outside, can attack the basket, incredibly athletic, can be a defensive asset. Juan Toscano Anderson, a tall big, who again can shoot fairly well, can get to the basket, played in the Warrior style offense, so is unselfish, understands how to find cutters, understands where to go to get open. is used to moving off the ball, which is going to help out LeBron a ton. It's going to help out Westbrook a ton. So they've made great moves, in my estimation. I love everything that they've done. The only thing that I don't love is Westbrook still being on the team. And that's most likely not going to happen. Talks have been said that it's going to happen, that something is potentially in the works with Utah. And they're going to get Bojan Bogdanovic, a couple other players. In fact, let me pull up the exact trade proposal that was being. So the trade was essentially a three-way trade: Lakers, Knicks, and Jazz. Donovan Mitchell goes to New York. Patrick Beverley goes to the Lakers, and Bojan Bogdanovic, and Westbrook gets moved to Utah. That's the trade that's being discussed. That could take place. Will it take place? Probably not. Because again, nobody wants Russell Westbrook. Nobody wants Russell Westbrook. Nobody wants Russell Westbrook. And again, the Jazz, well, they were contenders. Now probably not, because they try to blow up the franchise. But do you really want to see Mike Conley and Russell Westbrook on the floor together? Because that's what's going to happen. I know the Jazz don't want that. I know the Knicks want Donovan Mitchell, so they're winning. The Lakers are winning because they get rid of Westbrook, get Bogdan Bogdanovic, who plays for the Jazz. If I'm butchering his name, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm trying my best. But again, Westbrook right now is not a player that is actively wanted by anybody. He ruined his stock, not only because of his play, but because, per reports, was giving coaches a tough time, gave Frank Vogel a tough time, and is unwilling to change his play style. I've said this before, and I'll say this again. He's ruining his own reputation. He's hurting his own career. He is shooting his greatness in the foot, and I hate it for him. Because he thinks he is what he was in the past, but he's not that player anymore. He's not the guy in OKC. He can't get to the rim anymore at an effective rate. He can't shoot. He can't defend. He can pass, sure, but he won't be a pure playmaker, even though he has that ability. He won't take a back seat to just looking for assists. Yeah, he says he wants his team to win, but then at the same time, you see interviews being brought up in the past of him saying, I got my triple-double, I'm good. He's making his own case as to why you should not pick him up. And his contract, nobody wants to buy that out. Even in that trade scenario with the Knicks, Lakers, and Jazz, Jazz had to buy out his contract. Do they want that? Even if you're trying to blow up a squad, do you want that? I highly doubt it. It's discussed. But again, I don't think it's likely. If it happens, I'll be shocked and Lakers fans will be up in joy. Lakers fans will be. That's what they'll be. This is what you'll hear Lakers fans doing. I'll be doing that because I won't have to watch Russell Westbrook try to adapt in a situation that he seemingly doesn't want to be. I won't have to watch him struggle and fight to play his style of play when it's not conducive to winning. Yet he thinks, okay, I've just earned the right to be this guy. You've earned the right. That doesn't mean that you should use the right. I have the right to slap somebody that I don't like. That don't mean that I should. I have the right to try to fight my pops. Guess what? That don't mean I should. I got the right to slap somebody upside the head who said something stupid. But that don't mean I should. I, I got the right to slap Mitchell Baldwin upside the head. That don't mean I should. Again, it's all love, Mitch. It's all love. It's all love. Please, I can see it now. Next thing you know, you're gonna hear that, and then he's gonna bust through this door, and we gonna start scrapping. I'm sorry. There's no beef. No beef between us, please. No beef between Got Next and the Welch Report, please. It's all love. Just an example. Just an example. But the point still stands. I got the right to do those things. That don't mean that I should. Because in the long run, it's detrimental. Westbrook, you're being detrimental to your own organization. You're being detrimental to your own franchise. You're being detrimental to your own legacy, your own cachet. I have vaunted you as being one of the best teammates a player can have, because every other player has said that. But now you're now being uncoachable from reports. Stubborn. You're being what Carmelo Anthony was years ago when he thought he was still a number one option. Nowhere close. That's why he almost got out the league, even though he had no business being out the league. That same thing could happen to you. That same thing could happen to you someday. As that one clip from The Simpsons, it can happen to you. Or rather, it will happen to you. It's going to happen to you. It's going to happen to you. Because guess what? The market is skewed for certain types of players. And right now, you are the absolute worst example of those players. Hence, you're at the bottom of the food chain for what teams are willing not only to pay you when your contract is up, but also to trade for you if another team wants to move you off, like the Lakers want to do now. That's what's going on with Russell Westbrook. That's what's going on with Russell Westbrook. And yes, LeBron James just had productive talks with Rob Pelinka. Those productive talks have been, I want to be here. I'm not the problem. Move Russell Westbrook. And you know what Rob Pelinka said? Okay. That's the productive talk. Both sides want to know. They both want him here. LeBron wants to be here. Rob Pelinka wants him here. Management wants him here. And they understand that Westbrook's got to go. And if something needs to be done about Anthony Davis, something's got to get done about Anthony Davis. That's what is understood. That's productive. That is what production is. Westbrook has to go. And if he doesn't, guess what's going to happen? More of the same that we saw this season. LeBron breaking Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's record for all-time points, solidifying himself as one of the greatest scorers the NBA's ever seen, can be put in that conversation as the greatest scorer the NBA has ever seen. Further advance his legacy, accolades on accolades, just helping his career as a whole. But won't win, not because of his own ineptitude, because LeBron with ineptitudes is stupid to even insinuate. How dare I? Sacrilege, that is. Sacrilege. Blasphemy. The nerve of me to say that LeBron has inequities. The gall of me. He has nothing to prove. But he still wants to win. And what does that mean? Westbrook's got to go. Get your butt out of here. But guess what? Nobody wants him. Nobody wants him. Nobody wants to touch the cat. And rightfully so. We'll see if the moves are made, but you want to talk about shock. Shocked if that happens. Shocked if that happens. Absolutely shocked. The only reason why it would happen is because, again, Utah wants to blow up entirely. But I don't think they want to blow up that bad. I don't know if they want to blow up that bad. That is, whoa. If they really wanted to blow up, they would give Mike Conley as well. If they really wanted to blow up, they would give up Mike Conley as well. But guess what? It's probably not going to happen. Probably not going to happen. Probably not going to happen. And then last on the list for free agency trades that I deem notable, Jalen Brunson. 110 for 5 years. Knicks, what the word are you doing? I didn't touch this because I thought you were going to make some more moves. Knicks, 110 for 5 years for Jalen Brunson. I get he had a phenomenal playoff run. I get he had a phenomenal season last year. Excuse me, 4 years, 110 million. 4 years, 110 million for a offensively good playmaking guard. Not a star by any means, but good. Good. I love his evolution so far, but he's good. He's not no 110 million for 4 years. You essentially said you are the cornerstone of our team. Why? You keep doing this, Knicks. Every time you get money, you never capitalize. Every time you get a decent roster, you never capitalize. Every time you seem to have some level of success, you never capitalize on that ability. Never. Julius Randle, R.J. Barrett, Evan Fournier, Mitchell Robinson, Kemba Walker, even though some reports say he might go back to the Hornets. Right now, Kemba Walker, Derrick Rose, Emmanuel Quickley, O.P. Toppin, Cam Reddish. You have a bunch of young players that legitimately have promise. You've made some noise in the past in the playoffs. Yes, you faltered. Yes, because of Julius Randle. Understandable. I knew that all-star appearance that he had in that one season wasn't going to last, but he's still not bad. But you gave cornerstone money. You gave box office money. You gave carry our franchise money. You gave to Jalen Brunson because of one season and a great playoff run. It's not bad, but at the same time, it's not worth it. If you want to make some noise, give money to the right people. But guess what? Even if you give money to the right people, they won't want to come because your organization right now is in shambles, even with the mild success that you've had these past couple years. Again, management is horrible. Even if you got money, nobody wants to go there because management is horrible. And I hate that. Because the NBA is better. The world is better when the Knicks are good. But when the Knicks are bad, what happens? Kaput. You're a legacy team, a cornerstone team of the NBA that is a laughingstock rather than an organization to be looked at and vaunted as elite. I can't stand it. I can't stand it. Every time. It was a dumb decision. You re-signed a bunch of players, re-signed Mitchell Robinson, played him 4 years, which is great. But again, horrible that you give Jalen Brunson carry our franchise money when he's not a carry our franchise type of player. Watch. He's not going to show up. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And I'm never ashamed to be wrong. But right now with Jalen Brunson, one breakout year after a litany of years where he's been serviceable and good and a reliable backup, to all of a sudden be thrusted in carry our franchise, not only as a locker room leader, but as on-court talent. Again, there is a difference. Not every player can do both. Now that he's got that on his shoulders, he's not going to be able to deliver. Because that success is most likely going to be because all the other players around him stepped up. As in, Randall is playing like All-Star Randall. R.J. Barrett continues his rise to evolving and bettering his game. Evan Fournier stays Evan Fournier. And Mitchell Robinson continues to blow up as a defensive presence. And Kemba Walker doesn't shrink like he did the past couple seasons. And Derrick Rose plays as Derrick Rose. All of those things have to happen if you want to see Jalen Brunson play up to his $110 million contract. But again, with that contract, understand this, that's what the market calls for. And this is why I don't think Kevin Durant is going to be moved. Great transition. Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving aren't going to be moved from the Nets because of what the asking price is. If Jalen Brunson is getting moved or getting signed for 4 years, $110 million, and Rudy Gobert is getting, again, 1, 2, 3, 4 players and 5 draft picks, first round, if those two things are happening for either, again, top tier good or low tier elite, or excuse me, mid tier good and low tier elite. Rudy Gobert is low tier elite as a player. Jalen Brunson is mid tier good as a player. It's not a knock, it's just the truth. That's the best way to gauge those two. And they're getting hauls that you would see for all-star caliber players. And by all-star, I mean elite all-star caliber players. What the world do you think the Nets are asking for Kyrie and KD? And that's why the NBA is on hold right now. Because everybody's looking at what the Nets are asking, and it's exorbitant. Excuse me, it's astronomical. Better word. Astronomical. People look at that trade request, and this is how it falls on front desks on the front desk of teams when the Nets put in their request for a trade with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. That's what happens. That's what you feel. That's what front offices hear. That's what hits their front desk whenever the Nets put up a proposal for KD and Kyrie. Or when the team calls about KD and Kyrie, they get that. A sack of bricks dropped on the table. This is what we're looking for. Breaking the whole table. They're not asking for the keys to the house. They're asking for the keys to the house and the keys to the next house and the keys to the next house. In real estate, 20 miles away. They're asking for stuff they're asking the amount of money that the amount of assets that they're asking for Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving are so exorbitant because of the fact that what if, again, the market calls for it. Jalen Brunson's getting 110. He's not, as a player, he's not worth 110. But the market calls for a player of his caliber getting 110. Hence why he asked for 110. Rudy Gobert, again, is low tier elite. Many people viewed him as the problem with why the Utah was never able to get to the finals, even though they had the best records in the leagues and the best record in their conferences multiple times. At least top 5, top 3, consistently. And what do we say? Oh, it's Utah. They'll never go nowhere. They'll get knocked down in the first or second round. At worst, the Western Conference Finals, they always fold. They never get to where they need to be. And much of that blame was on Rudy Gobert. So now you want to put that. But again, a player that's getting most of the blame, who's averaging 15 points and 14 rebounds, 2 blocks, again, elite, don't get me wrong. But what he brings defensively, he lacks offensively. Those 15 are for lobs. Lobs and easy points. If you give him the ball in the post, he doesn't have a post game to his name. And it ain't like he's Shaq that can just get a dunk at any point in time. He ain't Giannis that can get a dunk at any point in time. Ain't got no footwork. Not a post hook. Ain't got a fadeaway. Ain't got a drop step. Unless he's mismatched on somebody severely. If he ain't getting on board and putting it back up, and even then, not much. Nobody's kicking it back out. So again, you're looking at all these different things. What he brings great defensively, similar to Marcus Smart. What he brings great defensively, he lacks offensively. It's not as severe as Marcus Smart, but it's still there. The point still stands. That is correct. So the market is skewed in such a way that the whole NBA is on hold because right now the asking price for elite players is so high because players that are mid-tier good are getting high-tier money or high-tier assets in return, even though they're not worth it. And so now teams can't just make moves because even for mid-tier players, they got to give up nearly their entire roster. They got to give up everything, future and present. And they can afford that. They can't afford that. That's why no team wants to do anything with the Nets at this point in time, not because the assets, not because Kevin Durant and Kyrie aren't worth it, but because of the fact that they're asking for, if we get Kevin Durant or Kyrie, or Lord willing both, they're going to come to a roster that's worse than Cleveland without LeBron. The year after he left. They're going to get that. They're going to get the equivalent of a worse roster than the 2018 Finals Cleveland Cavaliers. They had nobody except for LeBron. They're going to do that. And I know Kevin Durant can't carry that. And I sure enough know Kyrie Irving can't carry that. They can't. As great as they are. They're not LeBron. LeBron's the only player of this generation that can do something like that. And people want to say, oh, he did it with the Nets. No, he didn't. The Nets had, again, a phenomenal offense. They just had no defense. But they could score. Joe Harris, Patty Mills, KD, Kyrie, James Harden. At one time, all three of them at the same time. And then James Harden left. Even still, Andre Drummond, Blake Griffin, LaMarcus Aldridge. They had pieces that were serviceable. They had competent pieces. Joe Harris, one of the best shooters in the league. Patty Mills, one of the best microwave players in the league. When he gets hot, it's hard to stop him. Blake Griffin reinvigorated his career from Detroit, which, mind you, in Detroit, he was having one of his best individual seasons. Nobody cared because it was Detroit and they were just losing. Comes to Brooklyn, dunking again, being a hustle player, and had a little bit of offensive game to him as well. Didn't get much minutes, but he was a factor when he did get on the floor. Andre Drummond, great rebounder, and lob threat. They had pieces. They just didn't have any defense. Bruce Brown, who slowly but surely proved to me that, okay, he's not bad. He's serviceable, incredibly strong, can hassle you on the defensive end with his strength. He's not good, but he's serviceable, competent, That's what Brooklyn had. And while they nearly beat the Bucks with that team, still the point still stands. He couldn't take them by himself. He could not take them by himself. He couldn't do it. Could not do it. And so when you have any team that trades for him, they're going to put him in a worse situation than he already is in Brooklyn. In terms of, with not necessarily in terms of drama outside that leads to on-court lower performance, but low performance out the gate on the court because the team has nobody. And there will be no other star. And they're taking on a max contract, so they can't really sign anybody else. That's what you're looking at. We give up everything and we have nothing for when Kevin Durant gets here or when Kyrie Irving gets here. Nobody wants Kyrie because he's unreliable. Nobody wants Kevin Durant because the asking price for him is so high that it's not even worth getting them because we won't win regardless. We might have a worse record than we did if we didn't have him. Because we'll have nothing. We'll have no youth. We'll have no shooting. We'll have no defense. You will have you will have nothing but role players. Not even good role players. You'll be lucky to get average role players filling out the roster. That's what's going to happen if a trade transpires. And that's not what teams want. It's not what they want. So it's looking like he's going to stay unless somebody just bites the bullet or makes some astronomical trade. Might have to be a multi-team trade deal to get KD out of there. If they decide to move him, they can still keep him. The Nets can still keep him. They can keep both KD and Kyrie if they want to and say, no, y'all just play it out. But they don't want to lose Kyrie for nothing. And they don't want Kevin Durant to be unhappy. So they're going to do everything they can. But it's probably going to come to no avail because the asking price in the market is so skewed for players that are average or mid-level, both in cash value and in asset value, that any team that gives up anything for them is going to lose everything. And they'll have nothing. They won't have an organization worth running because they won't have anybody to actually say, okay, we can make a shot to make some noise in any capacity. Because they'll be running with a bunch of scrubs. Nothing but scrubs surrounding Kevin Durant or Kyrie. To a lesser degree. Well, actually, not even to a lesser degree, Kyrie. Kyrie asking value for a trade, it's still high. Because it's Steph, Kyrie, and Dame. Best point guards in the league. If you want to put Trey above Dame, do whatever. I think Dame's better than Trey. If you want to put Luka in that point guard conversation, then it's Steph, Kyrie, Luka, Dame, and then Trey. Who's second? Kyrie Irving. So the value for him is through the roof. You give up something for him, the Nets are going to ask for everything in return. You'll have nothing to show for it. And you won't have a team. You'll have the one varsity star player running with a bunch of JV bench players. That's what's going to happen. Because the market is just so skewed at this moment in time. That's why a bunch of moves that you would think would happen aren't happening. Will it change? We'll find out. But right now, that's not going to happen. It's not going to change. Sadly, it's not going to change. So the last thing that we are going to talk about on today's show is Jake Paul and Hakeem Rahman, because it's time to step into the ring. Oh yes, ladies and gentlemen, the worst has happened, and Jake Paul and Hakeem Rahman has gotten canceled. If you notice that there were a bunch of cuts in the last podcast, it's because of the fact that I had to cut out a whole segment, because the day I posted it, what happened? Jake Paul and Hakeem Rahman Jr. canceled. The fight's not gonna happen. Whole card is done. Whose fault is it that this happened? Let's break it down and go through the totality of this whole endeavor, because it's more than just black and white. Jake Paul and Hakeem Rahman gets announced. Contract gets sent. Jake Paul, per Hakeem Rahman and other reports, it was a sign or don't sign matter. You didn't have time to think it over, didn't have time to read it in detail. It was take this fight or we're moving on. That's what Jake Paul did to Hakeem Rahman in giving him the contract. Hakeem Rahman signs it. Contract called for cruiserweight, 200. Hakeem Rahman has 30 days from signing contract to the fight. Has 30 days to lose the weight, get down to 200, so he can fight Jake Paul. Hakeem Rahman then shows he has progress, gets down to 215, but then sees that he's not going to be able to make weight. Then actually moved up to 205. Jake Paul agrees, moves it up to 205. Hakeem Rahman then says that he's not going to be able to make 205, and then is willing to take all the penalties, only get paid $5,000 in order to still fight Jake Paul for him missing weight. Jake Paul says it's a breach of contract, calls up the fight. Fight's no longer happening. Seems black and white, doesn't it? Jake Paul give him the contract. Rahman signed it. Couldn't make weight. Couldn't make the adjusted weight. Fight gets called off. But it's not that simple. Understand this. Jake Paul says he wants to be a boxer. He says he's about that life with the sport and has been training adequately for it. Props to him. No discredit there. There has not been, to my knowledge, many, if any, fights that have been called off because of the fact that a fighter has missed weight. Championship fights have not been canceled because a fighter has missed weight. Look at Benavidez, Gervonta Tank Davis. David Benavidez, champion his division that Canelo Alvarez is in. Big, tall, strong, has missed weight. In title fights, the fight still happened. Just wasn't for the title, and he took the fine. But the fight still happened. Gervonta Tank Davis has missed weight, took fines, and the fight still happened. Fights don't get canceled because of missed weight. That's not what the sport's about. That's why they have sanctions. That's why they have penalties. That's why the New York State Athletic Commission monitors these people and has these weight checks in place to make sure that if you're not on track, you get punished accordingly. But that doesn't mean that a fight gets canceled. It doesn't. Jake Paul Rahman missed weight. That's on him. Rahman tried to play the game and say, I'll take the fines and I just want to fight. I'll take the minimum. I just still want to get in the ring because the long-term effects would be greater. Him knocking out Jake Paul, which was going to happen. Don't get it twisted. It was going to happen. See, Rahman has had 100 amateur fights. Is 12-1. Only lost against a 20-0 fighter who again is a KO artist. Hakeem Rahman, at the time of signing the contract, was between 225 and 236. Got down to 215, so he put in the work. But again, he would have knocked out Jake Paul easily in 1, if not at max in 3, because he would have played with him. Because this isn't Tyron Woodley. This is not Ben Askren. This is not a UFC fighter. This is a fighter who has also fought, again, under Hakeem Rahman, former heavyweight champion, upset Lennox Lewis, one of the greatest heavyweights in the 90s and of all time. Mind you, Lennox Lewis knocked out Mike Tyson. 46, 45 wins, I believe. Somewhere upwards of 40 wins. One of the greatest knockout artists in history. Hakeem Rahman's dad beat him, won the title, has trained his son from an early age to box. And he's been in 100 legitimate amateur fights with other people who have trained all their life. This is not UFC. This is boxing. All that experience leads to impeccable muscle memory against somebody that's only been training hard for 3 to 5 plus years. No. He would have gotten killed. His health was legitimately in danger, to the point that the New York State Athletic Commission did not even want to sanction this fight because of how dangerous it was for Jake Paul, due to their words, the gap in experience. This is not the same. They are not the same. If you think they're the same, you're sadly mistaken. Jake Paul was nowhere near the level of Hakeem Rahman. But in the contract, he tried to get every advantage possible. Again, giving him a contract that he could not, it was either sign it or we're gone. No looking over it, nothing like that. Making him go from, again, he could have chosen a cruiserweight that already fought at 200. He could have chosen a cruiserweight that was already at that weight class that he fights at. Jake Paul walks around at 190, was willing to go up to 205. Cruiserweight is upwards of 200 pounds. That's the weight limit. He could have fought somebody that's an actual boxer. If he's trying to transition to fight actual boxers, could have fought and put a contract against a legitimate cruiserweight that would not have to weight drain exponentially in only 30 days. It takes fighters months to weight drain safely. You're only giving them 30 days to get down from 236 pounds to 215. Excuse me, to 200. That is more than a pound a day. Even with the 205 weight limit elevation, it's still about a pound a day. So again, being a weight bully or trying to make people come down to your weight class to put them at a disadvantage. And then instead of still taking the fight, despite him missing weight, Rahman would have came in at 215, told his team he's going to come at 215. Then a week before, Jake Paul cancels the fight, I believe because it's his promotion. But if you're about that life, you understand that that doesn't happen in boxing. It doesn't get canceled. The fighter takes the fine and keep on trucking. You still fight. The whole goal of that contract was to put Rahman at an incredible disadvantage to where he would be weight drained, tired, can't rehydrate, back up to a weight that he can, be comfortable at, and give Jake Paul a better shot at winning. That's the politics of boxing that happen all the time. And Jake Paul played it to a T. This isn't anything new. You just read we see something that's drastic. But Jake Paul could have still taken the fight. It didn't have to be called off. Fights don't get called off because a fighter misses weight. That's what penalties are for. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that at all in boxing. It does not work like that. But the fact is, it happened. And because it happened, that means, one, Jake Paul, against the majority of his opponents, has all the leverage. And two, now people are going to say that boxers are running from Jake Paul. When in actuality, if you understand the sport, like I'm trying to help you all understand now, those who aren't aware, Jake Paul tried to, or did, put Hasim Rahman in a lose-lose situation where if he fought, he was going to be, again, at his own risk, because losing, going from 236 to 200 is in 30 days. It's astronomical. But then saying that he didn't abide by the contract now lets people say, oh, boxers are floozy. Boxers can't keep to their word. I'm going to keep fighting these UFC people because at least they stay true to what they do and they keep on fighting. They don't miss weight like these boxers do. And casual fans and people who only watch boxing when Jake Paul fights, and only fans of him are going to say, oh yeah, you boxers suck. Y'all ain't nothing. Y'all punks. It's stupid. It's absolutely stupid. Don't let the game fool you. Jake Paul could have still fought. Hasim Rahman did miss weight. Hasim Rahman did accept the fight. Hasim Rahman didn't know what he was getting into. That is understood. I'm not giving him any more credit or trying to give him a way out. I'm not doing that. What I am doing is letting him see, or letting you all see, that while he did miss weight of his own accord, Jake Paul, with all of that, still was able to take this fight. Because missing weight does not stop a fight. Failed drug tests can stop a fight, I believe. Injury can stop a fight. Cheating, that's grounds. But missing weight, no. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So if you want to see Jake Paul fight again, if you want to hold his flame to the fire and actually see what he actually has, push for him and look for him not to fight a UFC fighter, not to fight somebody with fighting experience, fight somebody with boxing experience who is in his weight class. Not below, coming up, but above or at cruiserweight or heavyweight. And if he picks somebody at heavyweight, pick somebody who walks around at 210. So that making that 200 weight limit isn't a hard thing. If you want to fight a boxer, fight a boxer. Don't go through all this mess with weight bullying, doing a bunch of stupid stuff to weight drain the cat, forcing him into a lose-lose situation where if he makes the fight, his health is severely diminished. He's not nearly close to his prime physically. And if he loses, well, he can't ever fight again because his boxing career is over. If he wins, hey, great, it's notoriety. But again, Jake Paul has, in every fight, Jake Paul has more to gain than anybody. Do you understand that Jake Paul was going to get an actual boxing ranking for either the WBA, the WBO, the WBC, or IBF? Excuse me, or IBO. One of those two. One of those four were going to give Jake Paul a legitimate boxing ranking, as in he would then be in line to work his way up to fight for a title down the line if he beat Yassine Rahman. If Jake Paul lost that fight, it doesn't move up Rahman anymore. He gets more notoriety. It may lead to him getting more opportunities to fight in main events, fight in Top Rank, fight on DAZN, fight on bigger cards, and bolster his fast track to success to a title shot. But even then, that's not guaranteed. Jake Paul is a boxer at this stage in his career. He was a YouTuber up until BoxRec and the world and the entire boxing community recognized his record as 5-0. No longer can you say he's a YouTuber. You have to say he's a boxer that does YouTube. And by that distinction, you now have to hold him to the right, requisite, fair playing field that every other boxer, not fighter, boxer is held to. Not UFC, boxing. And if that's the case, that means that you and everybody else around the boxing community, or just fans of Jake Paul, have to hold his feet to the fire and say, if you're going to fight, you need to fight somebody with experience, amateur background, and an actual record in boxing. Not losing record, because you've already went through the phase of fighting 0-0s, 0-1s, people with no experience or very little boxing experience. You went through that. Now it's time for you to start fighting journeymen. People that have fought 6-7 years in the game. People that may not be at the top, but they know what they're doing. People that have a bunch of amateur experience. Or young fighters that have a lot of amateur experience that are starting out their career with 12-1 records, 11-0 records, 10-0 records with 10 knockouts, 9-0 records with 5 knockouts, 1-0 records with no knockouts, but again, 30 fights in the amateurs, winning a belt, and going 28-2 in the amateurs. Hundreds of rounds of experience going into the professional fight. That's where Jake Paul is right now in his career as a boxer. If we're going to grade him as such, which we should, hence that means that he's got to fight somebody on that caliber. Anything less, I do not care. Anything less is a show. And I get that boxing is a business, and he's playing the business incredibly well. Just as good as anybody else that we've seen. That doesn't mean that the roots of the sport are the roots of the sport. That does not mean that you can turn this into a sideshow. That's not boxing. That's not what boxing is about. It's a show, absolutely. But that show has to come with substance. Don't let Jake Paul say that the show doesn't need substance. Because that's what he's doing right now. People are paying money to see him fight as a trained boxer against people that aren't boxers at all. That's like a boxer going to try to fight in the UFC with only 30, 60 days of training. It's stupid. Fight in the sport, fight in your weight class, and fight somebody with experience. It don't even got to be a lot, but it's got to be somebody that we see as, okay, yeah, this is the requisite, legitimate step up that you at your skill level are required to do. If you fight above your skill level, all the more for it. Go for it. But don't fight below. You better fight what your worth is. Anything less is going to be deemed by me as obsolete. That's how we got to look at Jake Paul. Don't let him fool you. Don't let him play the game without having to go through the struggle. Don't let him play the game on easy mode. Don't let him play the game on easy mode. Don't let him do it. Hold him to the fire and make him have to fight. Because if not, he's going to play the same sideshow over and over again. Fighting a bunch of UFC fighters, retired or otherwise. Never fighting a real boxer. Never fighting a real fighter. Never showing what his true worth is. Still talking smack. I'm all good for talking smack. Don't get it twisted. It's part of the game. It's part of the boxing. It's part of boxing. It's part of combat sports. Again, Jake Paul is great for boxing. He brings fans to the sport. That doesn't change the fact that he still has to go through the trials of a boxer. If you want to be about that life. And it's up to us to make sure that he does that. Even if you're a casual fan, guess what that means? You should want to see him reach higher as a casual fan. You should want to see him get up and fight greater and greater opponents to further bolster his own legacy as a fighter. To give you more ammo to say, look at what my favorite guy did. That should be what you do. Not let him get away with this mess. He's taking the sport seriously, but he ain't fighting other people that are taking the sport seriously for as long as he's been taking the sport seriously. He's fighting people below his class, but walking around like he's the baddest man on the planet. Have that confidence, sure. You got power. You got a right hand. You don't have any conditioning. You get tired after round 3 regardless of how much training you do. You always look out of shape even when you're in shape. And it always works against you. You turn into Deontay Wilder after in the middle of round 2, and you only throw the big right hand and nothing else. You don't throw combinations. You have terrible footwork. You can't move your head. You can't weave. Your block is horrible. The lightest hint of aggression will send you tumbling. Tyron Woodley isn't even a great stand-up guy. All-time great welterweight, and is not a great stand-up fighter. Weighed less than you, less experienced. One good shot sent you into the ropes in what should have been a knockdown, but wasn't called a knockdown. Only reason why that you were able to land that right hand is because you were fighting on the front foot and again, we're fighting against somebody that wasn't aggressive at all. Same thing with Ben Askren. You fought an aggressive fighter in Nate Robinson, but again, has not fought in his life, and is 5'5", and is 140. Should be fighting in the same class as Gervonta Davis, and doesn't have any skill set. You knock him out and walk around like it's unserious. Fought Gibbs, another YouTuber. He was a bump. But you walk around like you've been testing and can't nobody touch you. Again, it's part of the game. But as a fan who watches him and watches the sport, you should not be letting him get away with this. I'm sure enough not. Like Deontay Wilder, the second he steps up in competition, what's going to happen? He's going to get knocked out. Because the slightest hint of aggression, the second he has to fight on the back foot, guess where it's going to be? Back foot, wait until he gets into a corner, back on the ropes, boom, big right hand. Once he throws that right hand, he's not following up with nothing. Then we know what's going to happen against an actual fighter. Step back, lean, pop, catch him, and then boom, open up in the corner. Open up on the ropes. Make him fight on the back foot entirely. To the point where after that first big right hand that Jake Paul tries to throw, his overhand right that has legitimate power, he gets off balance every time he throws it, especially after round 2. In no position to recover and get into a great defensive, a proper defensive position, can't slip, is always going to roll the same way when he exits, and then won't be able to throw the right hand again. And he'll just get clobbered. And then he'll get knocked out. And then he'll be in trouble. Then he'll have to go to the hospital. Then he probably won't fight again. That's what's going to happen. But that shouldn't deter you from still getting him in the ring with somebody that's worth his time. Or rather, somebody that's at his skill level or above. And what is his skill level? A legitimate trained boxer with amateur experience. Not a lot of amateur experience, just amateur experience. That's coming up, a new professional. That's his skill level. But if he's going to fight somebody, I don't care what skill level is. Well, I do. I don't care if it's at or above. If he's going to fight, hold his flame to the fire. Make him make a contract that is not some mess that causes somebody to come incredibly down or incredibly up so that they're at a big disadvantage. Make him fight a fight with somebody at their best and see what he can do. No coming down from 30-something pounds. Fight a cruiserweight or a heavyweight that's 210 that can come down to cruiserweight with some legitimate experience at or above your skill level. Or excuse me, any boxer will be above his skill level. And show him what you got. Prove that you're bad. Prove that you're something serious. Prove that you got something that is worth watching. Because right now, no. Don't pull that mess that you did with Hasim Rahman. Again, Hasim failed to reach the goal. That doesn't negate the fact that Jake Paul played the bully game and put him in an uncompromising position. Don't just say to Jake Paul that Rahman missed weight. Oh, it's on him. You better use context. You better understand the full story. You better understand how the boxing game works. And how the boxing game works, Jake Paul set it up so that if Hasim Rahman made it to ring walks, he was going to come on his hands and knees. That's what would have happened. If he came at ring walk and had actually made 200 pounds or even 205, he would have came on his hands and knees. Because his body would have been shot night of the fight. Because weight training is something serious. Regardless of how good you are, weight training can make a fighter lose. All on its own. Despite their skill level. So fight with what the person has to offer. That's what would have happened if Rahman had fought Jake Paul. He would have gotten beat. But guess what? I would have had nothing to say about Jake Paul. Because you know what I would have said? He lost. I told you so. I knew it was going to be bad. But guess what? He actually did it. He went and fought somebody, even though there was a bunch of mess. He didn't stop the fight when he missed weight. like an actual boxer and kept on trucking and said, I'm going to be that guy in the ring and I'm going to back up all the talk that I've been saying. But no. Now it's our duty to make sure that he doesn't get away with that again. Make him fight a real fighter. Excuse me. Make him fight a real boxer. Not a fighter. Make him fight a real boxer. Make him fight at cruiserweight. Make him fight a 190 to 210 fighter. Make the catchweight 205. Give them the rehydration clause. Fight somebody legitimate. Because until then, I'm tired of hearing you in the news. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it. Because it's just a circle. Constant circle that never gets finished. It's an infinite loop of hype and disappointment. Hype and disappointment. Infinite loop. If you don't fight somebody that's real, you're not real to me. I'll say you have skills, and you do. You have a right hand. You have some power. That's it. Show me you have more against somebody that has more than you. Because that's where, at this stage in your career, if I'm gauging you as a boxer, that's where you are. That's what every other prospect and up-and-coming fighter would have to do. That's what you got to do too. That's what he has to do. If he doesn't, that's on him. And I have full right to say, I don't care. I got full right to say that as a boxer, you're real. But at the same time, you're as fake as can be. Because you've allowed the public to think that they can just fight without fighting. You've allowed them to think that they can just do whatever they want to do without actually get a challenge. Getting all the acclaim and fame without actually putting in the work. You're not about to rob the sport that I love. You're not about to do that. You better get right. And you fans and everybody on this channel, make sure that you hold him to it. And he does what he's supposed to do. And he fights who he's supposed to fight. Because if not, it's going to be a travesty. An absolute travesty. 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 So he's going to lose when he fights a real boxer. That doesn't change the fact that he needs to fight a real boxer. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. If you can't, I'll still give you your flowers and say that you tried. Guess what? Keep fighting. Keep fighting. One loss doesn't end a career. Keep on fighting if you lose. Don't be afraid of the O. Don't be like every other boxer or every other promoter that just wants to protect their fighter. Don't be afraid of losing. If you lose, get it back in blood with another opponent. Keep on fighting, keep on practicing, and get what you need. Fight. Improve yourself. Against people that are at or above your skill level. That's what you need to do. That's what he needs to do. That's what everybody that watches this and any fans that watch boxing as a casual, as a diehard, or as just a Jake Paul fan. That's the obligation. Hold him to the fire. Because until he does, he's as a skill, he has skills. As a boxer, he has some skills. They're not great, but he has some. But he's still a phony because he won't fight in his bracket. Until he does, I'm not going to consider him real. I'm considering his skill set legitimate, but as a boxer, I'm not going to consider him real. I'm not. Because a boxer who only fights non-boxers is not a boxer. That's just the truth. A boxer who fights non-boxers is not a boxer. A basketball player who beats non-basketball playing people is just good at basketball. But you wouldn't call them up here. You wouldn't put them in the same category as legitimate ball players. What would you say? He ain't good. He's just playing against people that don't know anything. Every time a ball player that calls himself a ball player plays against a legitimate talent and can't show up, we don't call him a ball player. We say that he sucks. That's what we got to do with Jake Paul. That's what I'm going to do. Until he fights, he is a scrub in the boxing world. Until he fights a boxer and proves me wrong. Win, lose, or draw. He's a scrub in the boxing world until he actually fights a boxer. As a promoter, great. What he does for the sport, phenomenal. As a boxer, scrub. Bum. Horrible. Until he fights somebody legitimate. That ain't changing until he actually changes his actions. Don't wait, bully. Don't put people in bonds. Make a legitimate contract. Get a legitimate fighter. And fight like you want it. Fight like you mean it. Fight like you need it. And show us all that you're worth the hype. That's what you need to do. And that's all I got to say. But this has been a phenomenal Welch Report edition. I'm so happy to be back. I'm so happy to be with you all again. NFL season's coming up. We still got stuff to cover on that. I'm just excited that we can do this more often. I'm keeping this consistent. I need you to make this show successful. Leave a like, comment your opinions and thoughts. Share it with everybody that you know. Make this show blow up. Watch it as many times as you want. Let's make this community great. And I'll see you all in the next episode. Peace and love, y'all. We out of here.